2024. It is now 6:01 p.m. Okay.
Maybe wait a while. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. The meeting's now been called to order. We will take a roll call vote. Commissioner Smith,
Here,
I'm sorry, roll call attendance. Commissioner Smith,
here,
Commissioner Cousins,
Here.
Commissioner Wolf,
Here.
Commissioner Zappos,
Here.
Commissioner Decker,
here.
and Commissioner McPherson is absent. We have a quorum. Thank you all for coming this evening. Thank you to everybody. We will move along with our agenda. Our public comment is towards the end. We just ask if you have any questions, that you raise your hand at that time that we recognize, and allow us to keep things orderly. All right. The first order of business are accounts payable. All of the minutes in the agenda have been sent out, as well as the accounts payable. Do we have a motion to accept to pay the bills?
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Probably asked this before, but City of Hudson is water, correct?
Which number? Yes, maybe which number? Well, we pay water,
Water and
sewage.
sewer. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that was the last.
Yeah,
time.
808,
I think that's the water and sewer.
Yep, but I will verify the amount for you.
That's fine. I just didn't know. That's the only thing I can imagine us paying the City of Hudson. So,
Yep.
yeah. That's it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved to second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The next order of business approval of the minutes.
I'll move it.
And I second.
We have a motion by Cousin, seconded by
Decker.
Decker. Thank you. All those, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. At this time, a resident Commissioner Decker, do you have anything?
No.
Thank you for that. So there is no resident commissioner report. We are supposed to have our accountant on the line, and I do not see him. Just 1 second. Mr. Brian Alton, are you there? Maybe under another name or guest? If so, can you unmute and speak up? Well, he's not there, so we will move the audit report to the second half of the agenda if he arrives. And so that will be, we will move up the development update. Was deferring the executive director report for that time because the redevelopment report as well as the report would have taken a considerable amount of time tonight. So at this time,
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is John Mattio. I'm with Malco Construction Development Corp. We're the partners of the Housing Authority on the redevelopment plan. With me tonight is Joel Malchi, who is the president and owner of Malco, Eugene Sambudo from Malco. And we're very pleased to have with us tonight our architects, two principal architects, Alex Gorlin, all the way over on the left, and then Quincy Williams. And I know the board is aware of the plan. I think most of the people have been at previous presentations, but again, I'm going to give a quick overview and then I'm going to ask the architects to go through the plan in a little bit more detail. First and foremost, again, the plan that's before the board is a preliminary plan. It's not a final plan. We still need approvals from the state. We need a site plan approval from the city. We need other funders to support the project. And as we said at the previous meetings, this plan can be revised as we go forward. We've had a number of meetings where we've had tenant input. There's some things that residents are looking for in the redevelopment plan. We've had some comments from the community at public meetings and a number of meetings that we've had here. And all of that is being incorporated as we think through moving forward. And we're getting some input from the state as well. And as we continue to evolve the plan going forward, we'll be back before this board and certainly before the city council. The city council has asked us to come and report to them on a regular basis, which we can do. I'm happy to do that. But with that, I'm going to stop now and maybe ask Mr. Borland and Mr. Williams if they want to talk about the plan that we're talking about.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to basically represent the plans that we developed so that it will refresh your memory about what's the idea for the replacement of Bliss Tower is. And just a little background about my firm. We specialize in affordable housing around the United States. And in fact, this year we won the New York State Affordable Housing Best Project Award for Project El Borinquin we did in the Bronx. And we also won a national AIA award for that as well. And then since I presented the project a few months ago, I finished actually a book on affordable housing called Housing the Nation. So I had to keep myself busy somehow. It's published by Rizzoli and it's Housing the Nation's Social Equity, Architecture, and the Future of Affordable Housing. So it talks about the importance of building affordable housing for everyone, that everyone deserves a wonderful place to live. And so I'll leave this here as exhibits for the Housing Authority.
Thank you.
And again, the idea of the plan was not to displace anyone in Bliss Tower, which is where the number of units came from for the first phase, 135, which would be built on site B, which is north of State Street. So the project includes two sites, A and B, as well as some scattered sites, but initially this is the main campus, let's say. So the 135 would be in two blocks of different heights to give variety. And again, this is preliminary, so it's not broken down into style or actual, let's say, architecture. And then once this is built, Bliss Tower would be taken down, and then site A would be built with additional units. And the additional units would all be workforce housing for policemen, firemen, teachers who really deserve a place to live in the city. And then the other aspect of the plan is a park that's almost 2 acres. That's an offering to the city and is larger than the park at the other end of Warren Street. So, and then we have more plans showing more detail showing the park and also the partial pedestrianization of State Street, which would still be open to emergency vehicles, but would create a more calm oasis in the center of this courtyard. And again, also the concept of Bliss Tower initially was an outmoded way of thinking about housing, which were towers in initially a park, but here a parking lot. So, and instead of a tower in the middle of that, it would be a courtyard, a place for the public, for the people, for the city of Hudson. So Quincy will talk a bit more about the park and the amenities as well.
So I think as we started to develop the initial concept, and there were a few variations to this, where we land, but I think collectively as a group, we wanted the amenity of the park to stand out. Not only being similar in scale to the opposite park on Warren, but here to create a community where children can play, where the community can come together, and it becomes an active environment. In addition to that, we think that there's good benefits to having nature around us. trees add a benefit to life. And as we see this, it creates these cooling effects within the environment that this residential building or series of residential buildings would be developed around. So in large, we find this to be a more common environment around the level of the city, bringing people into the center of this housing development, bringing children together. And I think that was our larger concept for this interior environment of the residential building.
And we're open to questions today and comments, but we also thought we could do a workshop for the development of the park going forward, where we would spend the day with the community to get your input for the development of the park as well. The kind of community charrette, as they say. So, I mean, right now it has a basketball court, play yards.
There's your feedback, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, is it okay to ask a question?
Yep.
Yeah, well, first, the books are fantastic. I don't know if you can sell them in bulk to us or something. We should have them somewhere in town. Because I don't think people follow this stuff closely, and it's a big effort to publish with that publisher. You know, that's a very hard to get by a publisher in the architecture space. My question, the charrette, would that be on a separate day? Or would that be today?
No, it would be a separate day. I mean, with your.
Yes, a
permission.
separate day.
Yeah.
I think that is a wonderful idea. I would love to have that scheduled a month in advance on the
Oh,
actual
yeah.
date, so that I too can invite some public architecture colleagues to join us. So can we commit to that today?
I don't know the exact day, but not,
No, we'll announce the date
Yeah.
that we're gonna do it because we need to inform the community as well as
Yeah.
prepare ourselves for the same.
right.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. I'm happy to help organize that with a month lead time. Great.
Any questions? Yes.
You spoke about the buildings, different heights, so what are the heights of the buildings by floors? I had thought that there,
Well, as you know, Bliss Tower is 9 stories,
Yes.
which is too tall. So everything here is between 5 and 7 stories and lower than the tower. So it's a result of actually higher ceilings. Bliss Tower has 8-foot ceilings, but much deeper slabs, and we will have 8'6" ceilings with thinner slabs because concrete is more efficient now. So it's this shows the preliminary idea of the breaking down of the heights, basically.
but when you said 5 and 7, but the little height will still on the 7 would,
No, it would be about around 18 feet lower
thank you,
than
Done
Bliss Tower.
thank you.
And how much taller would be than the building across the street, do we think?
Good point. There's a building, let's get on Columbia Street, directly across, there's a very long building that's, it's 5 stories, but it actually has a very deep second level, so it's the equivalent of 6 stories. So this is really not at all to show what we're doing, but to show the context or the setting of what we're doing, that it's not out of scale. In fact, lower, parts of it are lower than the building across the street.
Thank you.
Any other questions, the board?
I have my hand raised. I don't know if anyone's monitoring.
Go ahead.
This is Margaret Morris, council member for the First Ward. We received an email earlier today describing some of this project. And in your introduction, where you were talking about the first phase, where you would build replacement for Bliss Towers and then raise Bliss Towers and build additional units pretty much in the location of Bliss Towers, you referred to it as workforce housing. When I met with Mountco before the vote that we took in the council, and I queried this in the email that we received today, everything was presented to me as eligible Section 8 housing within the 30 to 80% of AMI. So are you saying that a portion of this development is not in fact Section 8 housing, or is all of it Section 8 but at the higher income level within Section 8?
Can you come on?
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. Morris. I was gonna type up the email and I still am, so you'll get this in writing. But it's a long response, which I'm gonna just go into briefly here. So you are correct that we currently have a Section 8 HAP contract for all the units here, but the HAP contract is only for 135 units. HUD will not allow us to modify that in any way, nor are we advocating for that in any way, but it's 135 units. So what we've already discussed with HUD, and I don't want to overstate this because, like for your records, HUD is working with us on this exact proposal. They're working with us to split up that HAP contract across the 3 projects. The impact of that would be that not all the units at the first phase are restricted at, 50% and below. It's so that each of the 3 buildings will have some sort of income diversity. So they're working actively with us with that on us now. That's a snapshot in time statement, so I don't have an outcome for you on that. But the answer to your short question on that specific comment, will the whole project be Section 8? The answer is no. It's intended to have 135 Section 8 households, which serves extremely low and low income households, Section 8 vouchers, which serves extremely low and low income households. And then the rest of the project is intended to be between 50 and 80% of AMI. So really incorporating the working families in the community.
So my understanding when we were speaking and when I was looking up Section 8 is that Section 8 eligibility also applies to 50 to 80% of AMI. Eligibility can go anywhere from 30 to 80%.
So it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but I can look into that. The programs generally, then maybe I don't want to put HHA on the spot either, but I thought it was limited to 50 in a situation of public housing conversion. For example, they want to make sure everyone is covered by a voucher. So I do know that they will there's, for example, you convert into tenant protection vouchers, they'll let those vouchers go to 80% of AMI. I'm not sure if it's a specific HUD conversion tool from public housing or if it's a part of the program, but I'm happy to look into that. That's not I'm not intending to misstate the Section 8 rules on that.
Okay, thank you. When we talked and when I had researched it, the RAD conversion documents that I looked up from HUD were that although this is private investment, HUD still considers it to be public housing and it is governed by public housing rules, which include income verification.
So we do income verification as part of Section 8, which is a HUD administered program. It is technically, because of the RAD conversion, it technically converts out of public housing, but my gut, and again, we will have to defer to even Nixon Peabody, our HUD attorneys here. My gut is that the programs largely overlap, especially when it comes to the income certification process for Section 8. And maybe that's where the overlap nuances I don't know about, but it technically should not be public housing, at least defined by HUD.
We're gonna income certify for people on Section 8.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone actually ends up being income certified to be protected by affordability standards. You're either certifying under the Section 8 program, which the residents are now, or you're certifying under the low income housing tax credit programs. So it's one or the other. So everyone will be income certifying. Ms. Morris, did that help you a little bit? I mean, not to put you on the spot with that question either, but I'm happy to go into it more.
That helps, but I would like to see it's in conflict with some of the materials that I've read from HUD. So I would like to see something in writing, and I'd like to see a legal opinion on that.
Absolutely. I will put it into writing, and then if there's anything specific that you're looking for a legal opinion on, we're happy to dig in further. But in writing, I can hopefully knock that out tonight. Wasn't such a short response, but I'll knock it out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions?
Well, first of all, I want to compliment you. Your voice carries so well without a microphone. That is fantastic. I thought you had a roving mic, so I aspire to have your vocal carry. Polite and sincere question from your friendly neighborhood immigrant. There may have been a technical issue, but I sent an email to you, Jeff, and to Tricia 2 over the last 10 days. And I sent 2 emails to the Montreal team that went unanswered. I'm sure it's been a busy couple of weeks and sometimes my inbox is out of control too. Sometimes there's spam folders. I just want to know, did you get my email?
I have not.
Okay, would you like to talk? We can troubleshoot later, whatever you want, but I would love you to, answer my email.
I answer all my emails. I've never received an email from you.
Okay, my log shows that it was sent and opened, but maybe that was.
Maybe that's the case, but I never received an email from you.
And that's fine, even if you do it's fine, so let's just like troubleshoot that, so we can do an email if that's preferable. And then I could see as well, you like, I don't know, my email's very cordial, we can do a 7-day like turnaround, and then happy to work through your team's council.
Sure, I think that we should probably, if you would like to, work through our council. So I didn't find those comments that productive in nature for the redevelopment more personal in nature, so that's why they went unresponded, which I thought was the most.
Okay, that's totally fine, and I didn't review by my council before I sent them, so happy for us to talk to the council, and this your council here today. Someone mentioned they could be like.
I'm just gonna ask him.
We should know. I know.
You're not here today. You're not here today.
Everybody's
But if you want to
here.
start the discussion, sir,
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm sorry.
We'll have a discussion.
Okay, happy to do that, whatever you prefer. Okay, so we'll go through your Nixon Peabody folks.
You know, send them our way, and if we feel like they need to be addressed, we'll send them along.
Got
Right,
it.
is that,
Okay, sure.
okay?
Okay, so we can do both, whatever's easy for you. My question though.
One second. I'm hate to interrupt you, but can you state, everybody doesn't know who you are here. Can you state your name for the record?
My name
please?
is Werner Hitlu van Vieren.
Thank you.
But just for me, the question that I asked you that I don't think was the first one is the open question about distributed versus centralized affordable housing. And so I believe the Spark of Hudson is another group in town that is buying up existing homes or renovating homes and turning them into some type of subsidized or affordable housing with, I'm not sure, I just don't know, but some of them have different layers of state or federal support, but they just choose to have lower rent charged. That I was at a workshop that they had, and they sort of had a very compelling argument why distributing subsidized housing leads to better outcomes, both for the tenants and for the community. And this is more concentrated in this sort of 2-block area. So we're just curious if you guys could comment on the pros and cons of sort of concentrated or more centralized housing units versus distributed over the geographic area.
Can we add it to the public comment so that they can finish going through the renderings first?
sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, actually.
And there's a question here from Ronald Pepnicki.
Yes, hello. I'm Ronald Kopnicki of Hudson, and forgive me if this question has already been answered. Apparently, last September, in relation to Site B, which is to the north of State Street, there was supposed to be a site study being done of that site to determine if it could support the structure originally proposed for that site. Can you tell me if that study was done, and if so, where it's available? Thanks.
Yeah, John Matteo from Malco, no, and I think we said this at previous meetings, and again, I'll say it again. We've come before the community at the earliest possible time to provide some initial information to try to get input from people before we went too far down the planning line. We're getting input from the community, we're getting input from the residents, okay? And we haven't done the specific site study that you're talking about. That's going to be done, but we didn't want to start that until we had enough input from the community to see, are we talking generally about the right thing? Are people going to come forward and say, we never want you to build on the basketball court. We never want you to build on the smoking pavilion. So we're not going to do that study until we get some sense that what we're talking about generally makes sense for the community. So the specific answer to your question is no, that study hasn't been done, but when it is, we'll make it available to everyone.
Okay, but the chances are very good that it will be done as the process goes forward.
Yes, absolutely. And the planning board is going to require that from us as we go forward too.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You good?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you, and this will not be the last time that Montco will be available as well as with the architects.
Yeah.
We will,
Public comment. I mean, yeah.
yeah, but one second, because we changed the order of the agenda because our accountant wasn't on and we need to review this information, so I need to pause and go back to that.
We can speak offline. I don't think it's fine. We can
No,
chat
you're fine.
offline.
The accountant, they're just switching the,
Yeah, and we do
Order
have a
of the
public
agenda.
comment period, so you'll have an opportunity, but this is something that needs to be discussed and he has a hard stop. Mr. Alton,
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
everybody has their audit reports in their hand, no better.
Can you get some acknowledgement that you can see the screen?
I can.
Yes.
Great. I'll try to make it a little bigger, guys. Okay. So good afternoon, good evening. My name is Brian Alton. I am the fee accountant for the Hudson Housing Authority. And this evening, I will be presenting the audit report as of June 2023, the fiscal year end of the Housing Authority. Before I will get to the audit report, the auditor would typically provide a management letter. The management letter provides observations from the auditor that may be an issue in future years, but they're not a problem. They're not a finding. They're just providing a sense of we're doing our job. This is what we see, even though it's not required to be in the audit report. We're given the authority a heads up, so to speak. So in this management letter, it talks about the authority being a going concern. A going concern means that you won't have enough money to operate. And this is stemming from the RAD conversion that did not go as planned. And these additional costs for the maintenance is the reason for this going concern, because the RAD conversion was not completed as it was supposed to be completed. So that's the first one. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the audit report. The next one is apartment inspections. I'm going to defer this one to Mr. Dodson. You want to respond to the apartment inspections?
Sure. Thank you for that, Brian. So for apartment inspections, during that time, our inspections had not been completed. They were literally days away. So since then, 100% of the units have been inspected and work orders have been put in the system, and we are addressing those concerns. So that was completed. The auditor just noted at the time that inspections had not been completed, as they have to be done annually. And so they were not done in a couple of years because of COVID and things of that nature, but we're back on track.
The next management comment is accounting reports. In the prior year, there were certain accounting reports not printed and provided to the auditor. In 2023, this was remediated and it corrected the issue. Tenant file documentation. Again, I'm going to defer this one to Mr. Dodson about the tenant file recommendations.
So they recommend that we implement procedures to ensure that supporting documentation is in the folders in all areas. Sometimes it's a matter of the auditor being able to find things and, documents being in the appropriate section. So before, but definitely by our next audit, this will be addressed with some new procedures and implementation to ensure that all the documents that are supposed to be are in place and in the right section are able to be found.
And Mr. Dodson, since we're speaking with the tenant file documentation, Can you also talk about the fraud risk policies, because that has to go with the tenant file documentation?
So the auditor also recommends that we develop procedures specifically for risk and fraud, situations, meaning how do we address, failure to report income, things of that nature. So those policies will be updated. They'll be brought to the board, we'll vote. And as that's done, by the next audit, we'll put those things in place. We'll present them to the auditor, letting them know what the procedures are so that we can protect the agency against fraud.
Great. The next comment was audit adjustments. In 2022, there were some significant audit adjustments. In 2023, there were no significant audit adjustments. So this appears to be remediated from the prior year. This next one, missing required supplemental information. This is a state GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board issue. It has nothing to do with the housing authority. The other post-employment benefits portion, they're supposed to get a 10-year trend, and the state has not issued this as of yet. Eventually, once the state gets 10 years under the belt, they will be providing this. But until then, I would consider this a management comment out of the authority's control. The auditors doing their job by just documenting this piece of information that the state's not yet had provided. That's everything with the management comment letter. I will move on to the audit report. The first thing I do when I get to the audit report, is there any findings? And there are no findings this year. Then I come up to the opinions, and you had an unmodified opinion.
Excuse me, Brian, what page are you on so the commissioners can follow along, please?
Excuse me?
What page are you on so the commissioners can follow along? They have a copy.
Sure,
of-
I'm on the table of contents. Yes.
Go ahead.
When I see an unmodified opinion, that is good. An unmodified opinion is good. It means there are no significant findings, material findings. Everything that was presented in your financials, your internal controls, and your compliance with the federal programs went very well. Let's talk about your financials. Okay, I'm now on the audit report, page 11. The first thing I go to is our current assets. This is our cash, our current receivables that we're going to collect within 1 year of the audit report. That is our current assets. Then we look at our current liabilities, and this is what we owe to vendors. So we're doing very well when we look at our cash position. What caused the going concern opinion was that we had an operating loss. It says $345,000, but about $200,000 of that is a paper loss. Has to do with depreciation expense and pension and OPEB paper. So there was no cash outlay for that. It's just a paper expense that we got to recognize because we're doing accrual accounting. So our loss was about $100,000, and that's what catches the auditor's eye. He's been aware, he's been auditing you guys for several years, and he's aware of the challenges with the RAD conversion, that RAD conversion transitioned you out of public housing, so you no longer have public housing. It's an apartment building with a Section 8 contract attached to it, basically. So the majority of that loss has to do with the maintenance and operation, the maintenance more or less, of those units, which is causing that significant reduction in cash. And that is why for the going concern, again, that opinion was received. But HHA, Hudson Housing Authority, has been working with HUD to correct this and bring more cash in. So Hudson Housing Authority has developed strategies to help remediate the RAD conversion and move forward and get additional funds for this property. That's what they're working on. That's everything I have for the audit report. Are there any questions?
Board of Commissioners, do you have any questions for the auditor?
Fee account. I'm not the auditor. I'm the fee accountant.
Fee accountant, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Jeez. Thank you for the fee account, BDO. All right,
Well, I appreciate you walking us through all that.
thank you very much, sir, and thank you for holding on, I appreciate it.
No problem. Guys, have a
Alright.
good evening. Thank you.
You as well.
Same thing.
Thank you, everybody, for being patient in that portion. And we will now continue our conversations by going to public comment. Does anybody have any public comment at this time?
I actually wanted to highlight.
I'm sorry, just say your name.
Oh,
every time.
sorry. I'm you from the Malco team. I wanted to highlight one question that we've gotten actually a lot, which is what the accountant just highlighted. So Bliss and HHA's financial situation isn't great. And the comment is, if you develop bigger, how are you going to ensure that it's going to be great? The main root of what you just heard from the accountant is they are strapped right now with revenue. So right now, and Ms. Morse actually asked me this question too. Hopefully she's still on. So what they're getting in right now from their Section 8 rent is equivalent to 35% of AMI. So they're getting, for example, from HUD, $600 for a one bedroom. I'm making these numbers up, but and within plus or minus 100, $750 for a two bedroom, right? And the operating cost of that is going to be $750. I mean, insurance, at least for our properties, we're carrying almost $2,000 a unit. Like they operate at $700 a unit for this. So they're at break even, but not because of anything else except their revenues are barely covering expenses. That's why there's also no money for rehab, right? It's like the way that the project is balanced. One of the main reasons why we're coming in is because it needs to be financially restructured. And a part of that process is, one, we can't do anything about the 135 TAP contract, right? So they're still gonna continue at 135 units at the rents that they are now. There's going to be zero impact on those HAP contracts, the HAP contract itself, in revenue impact and impact to the tenants. But if we are able to bring in higher AMIs through LifeTech, those are actually then when you see real rents, real $1,100 rents, which are unforeseen in Hudson. But that $1,100 is really critical for someone making, $25 an hour. So whatever that corresponding 30% of your income is, it's so critical and needed in the community, and it's not here at all. Your studios start at 1,400, right? It's like a quick Zillow search if you're curious about the jobs that are out there. If you look at Indeed and then you look at the Zillow searches, you can kind of measure up where that difference is. So there isn't that bracket between 1,100 and 1,400. And the difference between $1,100 a unit and $600 a unit is the difference between financial viability. So it's super important for us to add additional units that are actually bringing in real working class revenues into the project. And that's how we're looking to stabilize it. So part of that also, and I'm sorry to go on this, I can slow it down too, but I wanted to get it out without taking up as much time as you guys, without taking as much time. But a part of that also is we keep getting this comment about, oh, what pilot taxes are you, or what pilots are you going to pay? Like, what is your contribution to the city? And our contribution to the city, if this was a market rate apartment, and we were bringing in $1,800 a unit for every unit, that we could pay that amount in taxes, right? The bridge of operating in taxes. But because we are only bringing in the revenue that is the difference between 35% of AMI and like 85% of AMI, the more units we have, the more we can pay in the pilot. So it's a little bit like counterintuitive with the questions of like, how much are you gonna pay? Because we've kind of been like, not able to answer that because we don't know the answer to that, right? It's about how much revenue you bring in. So the more units you have, the more revenue you bring in. It's kind of like those folks who want us to pay more, we can, but it has to be the pro forma that works for us to be able to pay more. So it's kind of like math and balance sheets, and we're happy to go into the weeds, but that's also why we haven't addressed the pilot question more directly, notwithstanding the fact that we haven't discussed it with the mayor's office, but we haven't discussed that more directly, but that's the reason why. It's not because we're trying to hide information, it's just because we don't have an answer to that.
It's a work in progress.
So it's a work in progress.
And so I'm Rebecca Wolf, I'm the commissioner. I just wanted to add to what you just said, which maybe this is stating the obvious, but also what you're bringing to the city, like, which I hope is observed as being part of the benefit to the city is you're bringing housing to the city where there was none. So that's like, I don't know how that's calculated in the, and maybe, there must be some rubric or something that would calculate that, like what you're actually bringing, in addition to whatever pilot.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Charlotte Sada. Thank you, but I'm glad you went first to clear up some things. I have a few questions. One is.
I'm sorry, can you stand up so
Sure.
people on the camera can see up? I apologize.
One is that I appreciated understanding now that there is a 1-for-1 match for the people in Bliss Towers, the guaranteed, but no more for people, additional people from being covered by HUD. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't.
Somewhat, so we have contact existing for like 35,000.
135, and
Yeah.
if I understood, you said that it can't get raised past 135, is that
Not from
accurate?
HUD, no.
Not from HUD.
Didn't get the-
So it would
from
only,
the state.
so it would affect the low income. Then we're adding 200 more units. To your point about needing more units, more money coming in to support the finances. Does it have to be 200 units? I'm not asking for an answer now, but these are the thoughts that I have. That because I'm wondering, like, who's responsible for the business plans? Who's responsible for the utility readiness and the evaluations within the city, the infrastructure? Like, who's responsible for finding out, what the city can tolerate, right? And then the transportation studies to then see that we have to rebuild a building for the 135 tenants. That is like done, whatever. The additional 200, will the city's infrastructure be able to tolerate it? Will it need, those studies or those evaluations, who's doing them? Like, who's responsible? Go ahead.
I got, the quick answer is
Sure.
that the developers will have to, and I don't know if you've been to any planning board meetings lately,
Yeah.
but the Hudson City Planning Board is not giving out any site plan approvals to proposals that increase the load on the wastewater, stormwater system until a bigger plan has come up, and the onus of that is put on the applicant. So the applicant has to provide all that in a way that pleases both the city and the DEC. So your answer is, we have to do that. The developers have to do that.
Okay.
And your name, sir?
Oh, sorry, Nick Zakos, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I apologize.
I also just wanted to add, I know that the city of Hudson's population used to be about double what it is currently. So I wonder how that is factoring into questions about what the city infrastructure can tolerate.
And just for the record, it hasn't been what 8,000 all this time. It's been more than that previously, correct?
Oh,
I'm just-
I believe at its height, it was 12,000.
I'm
There were
just-
12,000 people living in Hudson.
12 to 15. So it's not something that's foreign, is my point.
Yeah.
We've had more folks living in the city. prior.
Right, but again, making sure.
Same infrastructure.
That the infrastructure can support what wants to happen. And then when you say we, Nick, when you said we are you saying the HHA is, or the HHA and?
I was referring to our partners
Right, we're
in the
developing partners.
developers. 'Cause
So is it that your group is responsible for ensuring these studies? Yeah, okay,
Go
great.
ahead, Michelle.
And-
He's gonna answer your question if
Let me
you.
try to respond, because you have a couple of things
Yeah,
there with all
thank
good
you.
points, and Nick gave a very good explanation. We're not asking the city to treat us differently than any other developer that would come before the city, okay? We're gonna be asked to submit a site plan, to go through the site plan application process. All of the infrastructure issues that you raised, because there are several, okay, it's involved in the site and traffic and parking, water, impact on municipal services. All of that gets addressed through the planning board process. So we're gonna have to submit the site plan application like everybody else. We're gonna go before the planning board, they review it. Often, and when I say we, I apologize, I'm gonna go back to what Nick said. So Malco and the Housing Authority will be hiring engineers, architects, okay? All that gets submitted to the planning board. The planning board often has their own engineers look and review the work that's done. And this is all in a public process. And the planning board will make a determination, okay, as to whether or not they feel they should issue a site plan for what's being proposed. And that's a common process, and that will take us several months going forward.
We're not reinventing,
Excuse me?
we're not reinventing the wheel.
Clearly, thank you. Okay, so given what you just said, given how long it'll take, or how much it's time consuming, right? And then it goes through everything. If in the event you start to find that there are aspects that wouldn't, the transportation, water, sewage, whatever it is, couldn't tolerate the total of 325 units. Is there mitigation plans being included, planning that first and foremost, the replacement of the people in Bliss Towers are there, regardless, like, you get, because predictably, I've been in the city for 25 years, the infrastructure isn't the best. So we're adding additional. I'm not saying that the city can't tolerate it, but it's quite possible that it may not be able to tolerate it. But if you have to go and reinvent the wheel, then the Bliss Towers, the replacement could be delayed by a lot of time. So I'm wondering, in the planning, in the working with the architects, are there mitigating plans to consider that, how to do that? Otherwise, you could predictably add 8 months to a year to getting the people moving from one building to another.
Yeah. Or John Matty again, Malco. Yeah, again, but it's a balancing act, because in order to be fair to the city, we would love to begin construction on site B right away, okay? But in fairness, the city has to understand the comprehensive plan that's being proposed, because they don't want to just look at that one site and say, well, okay, I guess that works here, but it's not gonna work with another 200 units on the other site. So the process will be, we're gonna propose what we have here, unless we make some changes. And then that process will get discussed with the planning board. And if the planning board says, listen, we know ultimately you guys want to put 300 units on the site, we think it's only 190, okay? Then you revise, and then we have to look and say, okay, can we make the economics work at 190? Okay. But that's a typical process. I don't think it's gonna delay the process at all.
Okay. Another question. Who came up with the number of units? Who was
The
that?
board.
And that was based on what?
We knew that we at least wanted to double, which would be 270. And then the architect said, hey, you know what, we can possibly do 300 to 315, and we said, let's do it. So it was the board. Yeah.
And was it knowing that it wouldn't be what's the statement about the HUD, the half, you can only have 135?
No, that's a separate comment
Right.
altogether. So,
And-
so the architect, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The architects were given the guidance for maximum build with like the best design aesthetic incorporated in it. And so this to them was like the well-designed aesthetic and the maximum build. Right, so maximum, excuse me, like, you know, as many units as we can, households as we can serve.
Gotcha, okay.
Just for the record, all over America right now, housing authorities are repositioning. That's what we call it everywhere. And part of that is because we cannot depend on the government to fund us adequately. For years, we have been funded under 100%, but we're asked to do 150% of the work. And so we can just build replacement housing, right? But that's not gonna help the housing authority sustain itself. So we have to,
Fair enough.
which is what she explained.
Fair enough. I'm all for this. But I have my own concerns about the planning and the thinking, and I know everybody is great at what they do, but having other sets of eyes, objective sets of eyes at times. I'm just saying, is given our city, Hudson, given what Hudson contends with, the infrastructure, all of that, can it tolerate it? Are there right conversations being had to determine what is best for the city of Hudson and supports also the residents of Bliss Towers and I forgot the term you used, the workforce, which critical,
Right.
no question.
And to your point, as I said, this is being done nationwide, so we're not the first to do it. And as a matter of fact, that's why we procured or developed or decided to work with a development partner who has experience in this area. And this is not their first rodeo. So we do appreciate the feedback. We want that. But we definitely, you know, the point that we're making and will continue to make is that this is not something we're doing in a vacuum. It is a well thought out process. And will continue to be so. Yes, Mr. Matteo.
I'm Matteo from Macro Getting. The type of planning process that you're talking about is exactly what should be done. It's exactly what is going to be done. You're going to see that, and it's all going to be in public. So everybody's going to have an opportunity to comment. I just wanted to comment on one thing, because we're all friends here, right? But, sometimes people latch on to work. So when we say maximum build, that doesn't mean, okay, how many units possibly get on that site? Many possibly units. That's not done here. This 300 units does not mean, wow, that's the most we can get there. We could put a lot more units on the site, okay, and probably could have it, it be work, have it be acceptable in terms of sewer capacity, work, all that. I think that there was some sensitivity here, the balance, okay, the need for affordable housing, and what the board would like to do is to increase public housing and to come up with a design and a development that still is compatible with the city. So I don't want anybody to think that maximum build means, wow, we've crammed as many units on there as possible, because that's not what this plan is.
Can I also add,
The president of Mount Health, and that's why we chose Gordon, the architect. The world renowned, he has a book. When it comes, we have actually built for, as third-party general contractors for this architect in several noted buildings that have won awards. They get it, they understand, he's a class act, and that's why when we brought him to the table as part of a portfolio to make it all work. So again, to get back to everybody, and I understand everybody's concern, and it will be an ongoing process. And it's a macro, it's a kumbaya here of all of us making this happen, and nothing was done, as Jeff said, in a vacuum. Nothing was done separately. Everybody here is well chosen, well thought out, and now we have a beautiful makeup artist to make this thing special, which he will. There's 100% comp. We built 3 buildings for him, and every one has received an award. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I
Good stuff,
add-
guys, good
Yeah.
stuff. Kumbaya.
Yes, Ms. Clement.
I'm Jeanette Wolfberg, I'm just a reporter.
Not just.
In I think in a previous meeting, you mentioned you have a waiting list to get into Bliss.
That's correct.
With the people on the waiting list be eligible for the workforce housing?
Well, they'll be eligible to get into, well, there's different AMIs and they'll be income qualified. And so, yes, as long as they qualified, if they're income qualified, they'll be able to get in. As well as the fact that we are looking to get, if I'm not mistaken, additional project-based vouchers from the state for each building that we build. So about, was it 16 or not 16?
It would be up to 16.
Up to 16 additional PDBs.
So up to 16 additional per
Project,
building.
no, well, 8 per building.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that the workforce housing site would have 3 buildings.
There are gonna be 3 buildings, 8 PBVs per building, so it's more than 16.
Per phase of
Per phase.
construction.
Oh, so per phase,
Sorry,
so
it was,
two, okay.
yeah, defined as,
Right. In addition, there will be low-income tax credit housing, which is also an income qualification, but it's gonna be spread.
So some of the people are, okay, well, it's everybody who is now on the waiting list for Bliss and is eligible to get Bliss. Will all of them be eligible for, and say they still are not one of the 16 people who get the project-based vouchers for the new, will all of them still be able to, if they are on the waiting list for Bliss now, would all of them still be able to get into the workforce housing?
If they qualify at the time,
So if
they'll have
if
to
they
be
make
qualified.
a high enough income.
You,
So I'm actually not sure how that will work in practice, but what we've seen with new construction is that it requires like a lottery system. So they'll advertise for all the units completely at each AMI band, so each household band. Sorry, I should first say that for all the existing tenants, you guys are all going, like, everyone's going over, like, don't be worried if you're an existing tenant, regardless of your income, you know, you're coming over into a Section 8 unit. But for everything else, I think how the state does it is they do it by like a lottery system where they'll post for 60 days the opening of every AMI band. They'll say, this is what your income, you know, if your income is under this, your rent is $600, if your income is this is your rent, that's like, you know, $700 for this and 800, like this spectrum. And then they put it out for 60 days, everybody applies. And then I believe at the end of 60 days, you're required to do like a public lottery draw to create like a wait list. So I'm not sure how they treat an existing wait list in that situation. Only because it's kind of a hybrid, right, between new construction and rehab, but it's gonna follow state and federal fair housing policies.
and we'll follow up.
So,
and
yeah,
get
we'll
more-
definitely
We'll
look
follow
at
up and get a better information for you.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Any more public comment?
I guess we'll get to my original question at the charrette with a month's lead time, right? About concentration and decentralization of housing, that'd be really great. That's it.
I just think you should definitely read that book in between now and.
I already ordered it. I only had 2 copies. It's coming to the mail center. It only had one 5-star review, but I'm sure I'll add a second.
Listen, just do me one thing, don't become an affordable housing developer after you read the book.
I
Have room for more.
There are different ways to make money.
So,
This is Margaret Morris. I had one more question for you.
go ahead.
Can you, yeah, so you, looking at the upper income level, up to 80% of AMI. All of this housing is below market, correct?
It's the low, okay, yeah.
Well, Margaret.
None of it.
I have a question for you, which you don't need
She's
to,
answering you.
so you don't have to answer it right now. But I'd like you to answer this question to my email. If I am a tenant, I am at the 80% of AMI. So I'm in the upper income level, but I'm still qualifying for below market rent. Will HUD provide the housing authority with a voucher to make up the discrepancy between the 30% of my gross income and the 35% of my income that you and I discussed? Will HHA be getting a voucher from HUD for people at the upper income threshold? That's my question.
So I think that there's still a little bit of like misunderstanding with the Section 8 vouchers. and the LIHTC, like a paralleling running LIHTC structure. So the Section 8 vouchers, and this is the part where, you know, like I'm uncertain of like if it's just serving 50% or below, or, you know, HUD's allowing 80% or below. But those are for like the existing 135 units. That's one structure. The 80% units that we're referring to, like notwithstanding any, you know, have contract RAD conversion, like outlier issues. The 80% units that we're referencing are under the low income housing tax credit program. So they run very differently. They run very much based on, not based on your income with the rent, but at that income level, there was a set rent. So if you recall, and I'm sorry I don't have any for you guys here, but if you recall at the Common Council meeting, I passed out the AMI chart. So that actually has the rent on it at 2024. So it will say what like the maximum 80% rent is, and then what the, excuse me, maximum 80% income is, and that rent, like how that corresponds. And it generally corresponds to like 30% of their income, but you know, the HUD also coincidentally in the picture here, HUD is like used its calculations to make that like rent income chart.
But what my question is, will there be any additional income to the housing authority from any source to make up the delta? Because the rents have to be set no higher than 35% of gross income. So even at the 80%, as you explained it, they cannot exceed 35%. Will the housing authority receive funding to cover that delta between 30% of my gross and 35%, which is the threshold at which my rent is set?
So again, that is only for the Section 8 households. So that's only really for argument's sake, we'll just use the 135 units, like that, those are the units that are capped.
So the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Yeah.
But because I think there's still like a kind of a very normal misunderstanding between the programs, but like still a misunderstanding between the programs. Because
so the total revenue to HHA for the individuals making at the 80% of AMI will be whatever the cap is set for 30% of my gross income based on my AMI. Is that correct?
No, it's based on the rent stated by HUD under the low income housing tax credit program. And I hope I'm understanding that question correctly, but I will email you back to make sure.
Yeah, I'd like to get that lined out. Thank you.
Would it be possible to get a HUD representative here that could speak to it, to answer, or, because this meeting's been great, it's cleared up things, I have more questions, but
He's the HUD representative.
And I was gonna say, and I would say no, because other than me, but I would say no, because while there are general rules and regulations, we're allowed to operate within the rules and regulations and develop what works best for us. What we will be is compliant according to HUD and LIHTC rules. They have to believe that. Because if we have no choice but to be.
all right, so just so Jeff, yeah, almost had me there, because that last comment leaves me uncomfortable then, because then you're governing yourself.
No, we're not. We're not.
Okay.
There's a whole board. HUD still comes in and you just saw us do an audit. We have rules that we have to do tax credit compliance. So we're not governing ourselves, not at all.
Okay, but there's questions, but then I know I may sound like I'm a Debbie Downer here, but I'm trying to get clarity.
I get it.
You brought up you were trying to speak about the AMI for the 30%, the 50%, the 80%. And I get that HHA needs to make money to survive, not survive, but to have money to function.
And additionally, the city needs more housing at all levels.
No question.
Yeah.
But when being asked, there's specific questions being asked about HUD, rules and regulations. This particular professional is not a professional in that world. You are, but you haven't answered it. You let this person answer it, who's not an expert in it.
I don't think that's true.
Right.
I don't think that's true.
Go ahead, Joe. I mean, John.
I'll give it a shot.
I don't even need to know the answer to it. I just want that we get.
But there's other people now that you've raised the question, and I see you. There's other people that raise the question that we want to answer.
First, the regulatory issue. This board is not making up its own rules. I think that's, I know that you didn't say that. I just want to make it very clear to everybody. All of these units are gonna be regulated. Okay, the rents are gonna be regulated, the incomes are gonna be regulated. Some of them are gonna be regulated by the state. When I say regulated, there's a regulatory agreement that gets recorded on the land so that these rules have to be followed. And that will set incomes, that will set rents, and rents will get adjusted over time, but the board has to follow those rules. Some of those rules just apply from the state to the state assisted units, the LIHTC units. There are the Section 8 vouchers that are involved here have to follow the HUD regulations. So there's two sets of regulations and they're treated differently, okay, and we're regulated differently. But this is no longer, and part of the issue is, I think, or part of the confusion is that this is no longer public housing. So even though this once was a publicly assisted housing development, it is no longer a publicly assisted housing project because it went through the RAD program to get it out of public housing. But because Section 8 is provided, HUD is still involved for those units, okay? And we'll, again, we can keep going over this going forward because it is complicated and the rules are a little different, but we'll make all the information available to everybody. Well,
I would only add that like, this process is going to take a long time. This is literally the beginning of the process, and like, you coming to the meetings after us announcing that we would love to have more participation at the meetings is what we're asking for. We're asking for the community to be involved. I also agree that there is more conversations that need to happen around like architectural integrity and making sure that it fits into, you know, the community that exists. All of those things matter, and we just haven't gotten that far yet. I think we're still at the part where, you know, people have a vested interest in making sure that this project is thought through. We picked Jeff before we started the development process because he exercised the most knowledge on what our intentions as this board were, which we knew was redevelopment. We knew that it was going to be tenant focused housing. And that is the reason that we picked him as our hire. And now we're beginning the process. So we're just asking for the trust of the community to see this process through. The doors have been open since the beginning of the process and they'll continue to be. And I think that it's also unique in specifically HHA redevelopment that there's this level of community participation this far, and that there's this level of partnership between the city and HHA. So like that says a lot about what historically this project has looked like when people have tried to bring up redevelopment and where we are now. So I hope that you keep coming and keep asking questions because, you know, maybe direct some of those Section 8 questions you have to Jeff in an email so we can get you back more information that you can read through yourself instead of just having a verbal answer given to you at the meetings. But it is a confusing process. Section 8 sucks most of the time. It's really hard to understand. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit, especially in our community. There's a bunch of people in many of our previous meetings that are sitting on the waiting list for Section 8 that don't necessarily even want to live in Bliss. They want to live elsewhere, but they can't find housing. So we have this revolving door of Section 8. So there's other issues that have to do with Section 8 that Jeff is trying to deal with. And this project addresses a lot of those issues because we can't house everybody right now that needs Section 8 and is qualified for Section 8. So there's lots of other questions that I'm sure once you start looking into Section 8 more will make sense and make this project appeal to you as the right answer to the problem that we have right now, which is addressing the affordability crisis, addressing the housing crisis, and addressing the fact that folks are living in dilapidated housing. So.
And before Hugo wants to speak, but I just want to add this too. And it's just part of my pet peeve. Every administration or person in a position like this does not do that. And so this is something that I don't do. And I'll say it this way. We're forward thinking. We're not going to look back at the past, but you have to know that we're literally in the middle of fixing something that was very, very broken. And that is another part of the complication.
Yeah.
It's in disarray.
Yeah.
And so that is another part of the complication where it's trying to be fixed. And there are, you know, we're pivoting along the way because different things come up. And there are different valid questions that are being asked, and as Claire said, and I may not know the answer right offhand, but I can certainly get the answer. And just so you know, and to gain your support back, HUD was here last Wednesday. Met with me, person from DC, Chicago, and Buffalo. Because they want to know what we're doing. They trust me and what we're trying to do, and they want to help us get to where we're going, just to be clear. Yes, sir.
Thank you for a very well organized meeting. I appreciate it. I think it would be helpful to answer your questions to have written questions and written answers. And one of the reasons for that, for example, is I'm sure the gentleman from Montgo did not mean to fool the architect and a makeup artist, which would ruin your chances of getting a Pritzker Prize. You know, we don't want that for you. So, when you speak off the cuff, it's easy to say something you probably don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a trained man. You're talking about like this is.
Well, I know him a long time,
Okay, you guys go for a long time, but we'll dig into that. But so written questions before and after, I think would be super helpful. Because then folks who are traveling or can come, can just like read along and like follow. And if you can do that like a week in advance and publish it maybe a week after, like City Hall does, that'd be super helpful.
Well, to your point, if I can interrupt 1 second, we're gonna do it. I can't say that it'll be in that timeline, but what I'll say is this, because what we're doing is we're listening to the community. I meet with the developers every week, right? And we bring back these questions, and now that we've gotten to this point, what we've been doing is putting the questions as asked and answers on the website. So as those questions come in, and we'll update those, we will update that document with more questions and answers. So it may be in 2 days' time it's there, based on the questions we get and what we get the answer. But we will consistently and constantly update that document, with those answers. Because it not only edifies the process, it edifies us as well.
No, totally. I'd say no more, Jeff. Thank you. And, just to politely agree, 14 days is fine. I think having a central place where questions specifically can be asked and specifically answered would alleviate a lot of the concerns around the project. And I just don't think, a central website should be very easy. And if it's public, then it can also be, extra professional. Everyone's liking, all the lawyers can review it.
Yeah. Before you state this, I just want to apologize. Our accountant wasn't here on time, the fee accountant, and the meeting would have went different. I didn't want to interrupt. I don't want anybody to feel as though we were putting you off. But that's something that had to be done. It was important to the integrity of the process, and thank you for being patient and allowing us to get back to it. Your question?
In your email, you had a link, and I understood it was like for the questions or information, but when I click it, all I see are the renditions, the rendering.
There's 2 documents. If you go to the Hudson Housing Authority, thank you for that question. Go to Hudson Housing Authority website, which in the future will look way better than it looks now, but it's what we have now. Look under the redevelopment tab. If you click on that tab, there are 2 documents on there. One is the renderings.
Right.
The second is a Word document with questions and answers.
I know, but when I pulled it up, it didn't pull up. That's what I'm saying. When
I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you before you leave today. But if you go directly to the website, you'll get the information. Thank you. Yes.
Somebody said that the workforce housing will be for people with between 50 and 80% of the AMI. What is for current residents of Bliss and Columbia Apartments? What is the requirement, income requirement for the person?
Well, the income that we serve right now, if that's what you're asking, is very, very low AMI. So it's 30% and below. We have some very few people that make a little more, maybe 10. But primarily our target right now, the people we serve are extremely low. That's what it's called, extremely low AMI, which is 30% and below.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I was wondering, is this model over here with the architect's plan, is that like legit, or is it gonna change over time? Cause we talking about it and I know things might change or whatever, so is that is that gonna be the building that we're gonna build here? Or is it gonna change, and if so, will y'all make like a model, cause there's like a model of the building, back here. So we can like actually see it and visualize ourselves like in there, you understand what I'm saying? So, is that the structure that's gonna be kind of like legit, you understand what I'm saying?
So this is our vision for.
So that's
for
just
the
the
site.
vision, that's not the,
And this is what we intend to do
Okay.
as best as we could,
yes,
given, again, the community involvement in the project.
yes.
We'll take comments, we will sit as a group and decide what is best in these comments going forward. But this is our general vision for the site, and this is what we hope to achieve in the end analysis.
Once it's finalized, it'll be mobilized.
Right.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you for that question, but she's an artist. She wants to see it. So I get it. You know,
Love that.
I appreciate it.
Model.
It'll be a better model. Anything else?
Can I just mention, like, and I'm sorry, I'm bad with names.
Commissioner Decker?
Yes, no, sorry.
No, just tell people who you are.
You're saying that it's just about the housing. I just noticed on Facebook, there was two different apartments on Warren Street. One is $8,000 for a 3-bedroom. The other one was, I think it was like almost 4,000. There's no way us for affordable housing, we can't afford that. So just keep that in mind. Like, we need somewhere to live too. I mean, I'm just putting it out there.
I have yet, nothing has ever come out of my mouth once. I want to say this because you've said it several times in meetings. Never once did anything come out of my mouth that Ed has ever said that Bliss Towers and the residents of Bliss Towers need housing. Always.
I never said.
Whenever as people are speaking, there are some people that may not be for the project, the plan, right? But I don't think there's I've not met anybody, and I said this, that doesn't believe that the residents of Bliss Towers need a great place to live. The question is how to make sure that it's what's being created and built is gonna serve the residents and it's gonna serve the community. I give you my word. I am committed that the people of Bliss Towers has a home that they can be proud of and that they don't have to complain that things don't work.
I think there's a couple of different conversations that are happening. And I think, I've talked to Mary outside of the meetings and I've talked to other residents on a regular basis, and the defensiveness is not just directed at you. There's media, there's comments on media, there's people talking about the project in the public that have never attended a meeting to see what the plan actually is. And folks are in defense of their livelihood. Understood, you support replacing the 135 units so that the folks that live in Bliss are put in better housing. I think everybody has that grasp. I feel like tenants at every step of this process are going to continue to defend the need for having this kind of housing, regardless, whether you said it or not, they're going to defend. And as a commissioner, I think that's her job to represent the opinion of the overwhelming majority of other tenants and residents in this building. So, it's also nerve-wracking to say that to people. I live in this building that is always being questioned about how horrible the conditions are. And this is what I literally turn off the meeting and go upstairs to. So, we also have to keep that in mind when we're giving our opinion on what is next for the project, because the pace that the project moves matters to the folks that live here. So yes, we all want to see those 135 apartments replaced, but slowing the process by over questioning some of the professionals in the process, or not accepting what folks are working extremely hard to produce, is also preventing these folks from getting better housing. So that's the concern. And these folks specifically, folks have lived here since this building has been erected.
Literally.
And we want them to see the end result of people caring about seeing this process through, because they are living in substandard housing. It's not healthy housing. The building is crumbling, and they've heard multiple boards come before them and say, we're gonna get this done, we're gonna get this done, we're gonna get this done. So we're in the same point of the process with people that are trying really, really hard to just see this process through and welcoming in the community this time to really get it done. So, I commend you for continuously saying what you have to say and always sharing the residents' opinions and every comment that you get. I think having 2 tenant commissioners, being able to work with developers and share their immediate concerns has been amazing. And again, I just urge you to continue coming so that you can hear some of the other perspectives that tenants bring besides just the defensiveness, because it's there.
Yeah. So,
I just want to add quickly, more Johnson, that last year we had 107 Section 8 vouchers in the city of Hudson. Most of those have expired because people were unable to find suitable housing. Right now, there's 135 apartments here, but some of those apartments have individuals who would love their own space, but can't move out of that space because there's no space to go.
that's correct. Very good point. Very good point. So that's where you see the fire and the venom that comes from me. And I'll be honest about that because I literally have lived in this. Maybe people don't understand that I lived in this. I went back to my old place at 183 Pennington Street, apartment 2C in North, and literally as a supervisor and walked in the apartment and cried because I could not believe the space that I lived in, but I cherished it. And so while I'm sure these residents cherish the same, they do want, deserve, and need better. And so that's why we do what we do. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I just want to add, Jeff is going on 2 years with us.
Oh, wow.
In the next few weeks, so.
Motion to adjourn.
And also. Also, but I would just ask that all of us elevate our level of communication and elevate our sharing of information. The more that happens, the less opportunity human beings have to make up things. When we don't know something, we'll make up stuff. It's a human thing. And I'm appreciative of this meeting. I'm walking away with more information. I have more questions. I'm gonna keep coming and keep asking and keep challenging, but I'm educated better. Not everybody's gonna come, but up until this meeting, I just would ask that we all, me included, but
Continue to ask, we will answer. We want open dialogue. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
Aye.
Motion meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.